Hello friends. So finally we have reached the last segment of part 1 of our discussion on China-Pakistan economic corridor. I'm sure you have listened to the previous three parts of this presentation, and you must have uh, extracted some benefit out of it. So pay attention to this segment. This is very important. I might be rushing because this is a little lengthy debate. It talks about while we are analyzing or we are debating the overall advantages which China gains from having alternate trade routes. Not only from China-Pakistan economic corridor, or as well as from other countries, which gives it a lot of economic and political benefits. One of them is access to the Indian Ocean. I have mentioned that the foremost benefit which China gets is having from one ocean country, it becomes a two ocean country, and but by having access to the Indian Ocean, and having control of it, suddenly we have noticed that an undeclared war for naval dominance has erupted in the Indian Ocean. I'll explain to you in due course. Please remember that this is under the same heading of the CPEC advantages for China. So I'll just enlarge your horizon. Stay tuned. So this is the fourth aspect of what China benefit, which the benefit which China gains from having an alternate trade route. China has made arrangements with other countries apart from having control of Gwadar deep sea port. China has made arrangements with other countries in the Indian Ocean, such as Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and Djibouti, getting access to the naval and shipping ports, which is called as a string of pearls, or to be more precise, string of naval pearls. That has ushered a war for naval dominance in the Indian Ocean. In one of my papers on CPEC and Balochistan insurgency back in 2014, I had noticed that with this development of Gwadar port, beginning from in 2002, suddenly we had this Balochistan insurgency, which talked about Balochistan separatism. It suddenly erupted. So obviously it has some deep connection with the development of the Gwadar port. Obviously some of our detractors, enemies, adversaries, competitors, they do not want Gwadar deep sea port to become viable. And so that's why perhaps that was the first reason why Balochistan insurgency suddenly erupted in the same time period, 2002-2004 period. And secondly, if you note that with the heading over of the Gwadar deep sea port to China's Overseas Port Holding Company in February 2003, suddenly a race for gaining access to the shipping ports around the region, it began. Feeling threatened by the Gwadar port, India began constructing a sprawling naval base. It's called Kadamba at Karwar. I hope I am pronouncing it properly. So Karwar near Goa in Karnataka in 2005. In its second phase began in 2011, and its expected completion is next year, that is 2019. So Iran, on the other hand, sped up its construction of the Chabahar port in partnership with India, denied access to Afghanistan and Central Asian republics through Pakistan, India has been building this route through Iran called the North-South Corridor. Please do not confuse this North-South Corridor with other corridors with the same nomenclature in the world. This North-South Corridor has two arteries. One begins at Chabahar port and passing through Iran's Zahedan and Mashhad. It touches Charzu. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly. Charzu in Turkmenistan. It touches Tashkent in Uzbekistan, then Zambul in Kazakhstan, Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, and ends up at Almaty, again in Kazakhstan, and it plans to reach Russia eventually. The other artery of this North-South corridor is Chabahar Hajik corridor. It begins at Chabahar again and passes through Iran Sheher, Zahedan and Zabul in Iran, and then it bifurcates into two arteries as it enters Afghanistan. One route passes through Kandahar and reaches up to Kabul. The other passes through Herat, Mazar-e-Sharif and ends up at Faizabad. So in this regard, India has already constructed a 215 kilometers long Dilaram-Zaranj highway in Afghanistan. You know that since Afghanistan does not have a seaport, it has been transiting its goods through Pakistan under an agreement which is called Afghanistan-Pakistan Transit Trade Agreement since 1960s. However, considering the near hostile relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan due to Durand Line and other political issues like Taliban, etc., Afghanistan, India and Iran had partnered together in 2016 to provide an alternate route to Afghanistan-Pakistan transit trade, bypassing Pakistan through this North-South corridor. However, as I said, please do not mix it with other North-South corridors because there are at least 6 other such corridors available. Just for your reference, I'll briefly say North-South and East-West corridor is a highway project in India. Then there is a North-South corridor in Adelaide in Australia, South Australia. Third, there is a North-South corridor which is a mass transit railway line in Hong Kong. Fourth, there is a North-South corridor in Singapore, an expressway in Singapore. Fifth, we have a North-South corridor in India's West Bengal, a proposed highway in Haldia port near Farah barrage, linking Nepal, Bhutan and Bangladesh. Sixth, the Kolkata Metro Line number 1 is also called North-South Metro Corridor. And finally, as we were referring to, the 7th one is the North-South Corridor in Afghanistan and Central Asian republics, connecting Russia through Iran and Central Asian republics. Coming back to the war of naval dominance in the Indian Ocean, ladies and gentlemen, so despite of Gwadar and Chabahar having a distance between them just 76 nautical miles, Iran began constructing another naval base in between them at Pasa Bandar. So Pasa Bandar is a newly planned naval port by Iran. I guess that is more for a military purpose rather than any economic dividends which Iran plans, because those of you who might be following Iran's nuclear program since 2006, when there was a war between Hezbollah and Israel. So at that time there was a lot of talk about Israel conducting aerial strikes at Iran's nuclear facilities. So in return, Iran had threatened that it's going to block the Strait of Hormuz, through which 35% of the world's oil is transported. So Strait of Hormuz, similar to the Strait of Malacca, is another choke point, a narrow strait on which Iran has an effective control. And Pasa Bandar is right next to it, at the southern eastern edge of Iran, overseeing the strait. Moreover, China has already established a naval base at Djibouti, which was opened up in 2017, which made other countries of the Middle East to also get into a mad rush to set up their naval bases in different countries in the Horn of Africa, including the Red Sea. The Horn of Africa, friends, is a peninsula in East Africa along the southern side of the Gulf of Aden and the southwest Red Sea. The Horn of Africa, if you see the map, you would see it's the easternmost projection of the African continent and includes countries like Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, has also finalized a deal with Djibouti to establish a naval base over there. United Arab Emirates, on the other hand, has just built a naval and air facility at Assab, nearby Eritrea, and runs a training base at Mogadishu in Somalia. Turkey has recently signed a defense deal with Sudan, with which Turkey will build the old Ottoman era port, naval port at Suakin on the Red Sea, including a naval base over there. The Suakin port will further strengthen Turkey's military facilities in Qatar, which already has a presence of about 3,000 troops stationed there, as well as in Mogadishu in Somalia. Furthermore, the Turkish Navy has had 3 stints of command, commanding the Combined Task Force number 151. It's a multinational naval coalition that escorts commercial ships through the Gulf of Aden, because if you remember, there had been a lot of piracy going on. There had been sea pirates, especially in Mogadishu and Somalia, who were threatening the sea liners. The rush for naval dominance among the Middle Eastern countries comes from a rivalry for supremacy over the Middle East, with Saudi Arabia supported by Egypt and UAE on one side, and Iran having support of Turkey and Qatar on the other side. Using its Sunni card and its influence through money, through which is commonly known as Saudi Arabia's checkbook diplomacy, Saudi Arabia has even reached out to the countries like Indonesia and smaller countries like Comoros and Maldives in the Southeast Asia. All these countries are Saudi Arabia's partners in alliance in the IMAT. IMAT, if you know, is the Islamic Military Alliance Against Terrorism. However, we all know that IMAT is a military alliance against Iran, because under the current Saudi leadership of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is popularly known as MBS, a Saudi-Iranian conflict can erupt anytime soon. We have already seen Saudi Arabia's interference in Syria by supporting the rebels groups against President Bashar al-Assad. Then we had Saudi Arabia's senseless and disastrous war in Yemen since 2015, bringing the hapless country to the edge of famine and human misery. Saudi Arabia has also enforced a blockade of Qatar, the tiny state of Qatar, since 2017, besides interfering in the internal affairs, internal political matters of Lebanon. You must have read recently the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Mr. Hariri, came to Saudi Arabia and resigned from there, and so on and so forth. Some people say he was held as a hostage. Anyway, that's a long story of Middle East, and mind you, this religious and political conflict has been ongoing since 7th century, so it better be left unsaid. India, meanwhile, has been building its forward operating bases what are called as the staging facilities in India's own Andaman and Nicobar Islands near the Strait of Malacca in the Indian Ocean. India has also is having very close cooperation with countries like Seychelles and Mauritius, with which India has very close relations. India has already signed a defense logistics agreement with the United States in August 2016. It's called LEMOA, LEMOA, which stands for Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. LEMOA is basically a tweaked India-specific version of Logistics Support Agreement, which America has with several other countries in the world for close military-to-military cooperation and naval facilities exchange. The agreement, this LEMOA, primarily covers four areas of cooperation: port calls, joint exercises, training, and finally the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Moreover, India has recently signed a logistics exchange agreement with France, which opens up France naval facilities in Djibouti and Reunion to be used by India. You may not have heard about Reunion. I had also not heard about Reunion until recently. It's actually a tiny part of a tiny island in the western Indian Ocean near Africa. Situated east of Madagascar, about 109 miles or 175 kilometers southwest of Mauritius. France, you should be knowing, comprises of 18 administrative regions, including 13 metropolitan regions and 5 overseas regions. Reunion is one of them. So, moreover, India has also signed a deal with Oman, which will allow Indian Navy to access the Omani's port of Duqm for logistics and maintenance purposes. This access to Omani's port Duqm grants India to have its oil storage facilities like strategic oil reserves to be kept in that port. So when we talk about the naval dominance in the Indian Ocean, ladies and gentlemen, you should be aware of two important platforms, naval platforms. One is called the Indian Ocean Rim Association, or it's also called as IORA. So the Indian Ocean Rim Association is an international organization consisting of coastal countries bordering the Indian Ocean. The coordinating secretariat of IORA is located at the cyber city of Ebane in Mauritius. The IORA is a regional platform for economic cooperation, trade facilitation, and social development. The second association is called as Indian Ocean Naval Symposium. The Indian Ocean Naval Symposium is also called as IONS. It's basically a platform for conducting biennial meetings, meaning one meeting every 2 years, among the littoral states of the Indian Ocean region. Littoral states are those countries having shorelines with the Indian Ocean. So IONS provides a forum to increase maritime security cooperation, providing a forum for discussion among regional partners on maritime issues and promote friendly relations among the member nations. Iran has recently taken over as its chair, and it's going to exercise a fair amount of influence in the Indian Ocean through this IONS. We had a lengthy discussion on Indian Ocean, but it's important for you to understand the significance of the Indian Ocean and why major powers are trying to establish their hold and control over this ocean. You know, the Middle East situation, as I mentioned, is pretty volatile, with major conflict maybe emerging anytime soon due to due to another reason is Iran's nuclear program. Iran had an agreement with the world powers, which United States has backed off, and now there are renewed threats. So that's why United States has renamed its Pacific Command to Indo-Pacific Naval Command, bringing the Indian Ocean under its close watch. China's naval presence in Indian Ocean has further spurred this a renewed interest in the Indian Ocean, not only by the countries of the region but also by the United States, in which I said that previous Pacific Command has now become Indo-Pacific Command. You may also know, you might be knowing, the South China Sea is already a disputed region because of Spratly Islands dispute. Spratly Island dispute is an ongoing territorial dispute between China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, and the South China Sea. All these countries claim several of these Spratly Islands, comprising of maritime reefs, banks, and cays, carrying huge deposits of natural resources under them. So China, being a powerful country of the region, has already established its military control over quite a few Spratly Islands, and it is further developing them with its military force. With control of these Spratly Islands, China will have further military control and naval control of South China Sea. At the ShangriLa Dialogue in Singapore in June 2018, the U.S. Defense Secretary General James Mattis has criticized China's militarization of these South China Sea's islands, insisting that the weapon systems being deployed over there are meant to intimidate and coerce Beijing's neighbors. So Shangri-La Dialogue basically is an Asian defense forum held in Singapore every year. So it's again to check China's military rise and economic power. In his speech at the forum, the Defense Secretary laid out the broader U.S. strategy for a free and open Indo-Pacific region, in which India's naval power will be utilized. So, mind you, India is stepping ahead into its naval outreach in the Indian Ocean. I have already told you about the Asian Security Diamond, or the Quadrilateral Security Framework, which comprises of United States, India, Japan, and Australia. This means two things are going to happen. One, India's naval presence in the Pacific Ocean will make India come in direct conflict with China in the South China Sea, and for that very purpose, India has been striving to make its navy a blue water navy. So blue water navy means that the naval force has a capability to extend its operations globally, especially in farther and deeper oceans of the world. Presently, India remains in the Indian Ocean territory. So, secondly, India's naval posture in the Indian Ocean will become more aggressive and threatening to the smaller states, including Pakistan, which is not a good thing for the stability of the Indian Ocean and the wider region. India has already nuclearized Indian Ocean with its nuclear power and nuclear-armed submarines patrolling in the Indian Ocean. But then India has the support and backing of the United States, for which India may be used as a regional policeman in this Indo-Pacific region. At his keynote speak at the address at the Second Raisana Dialogue in India on 19th January 2017. The American commander of the Pacific Command, at that time it was Pacific Naval Command, Admiral Harry Harris, had proudly noted that his Pacific Command, or PACOM, spans from Hollywood to Bollywood, a reference to the Indian film industry. So imagine how deep-rooted Indian influence has gone, and India extend its naval presence not only in Indian Ocean but also in the Pacific Ocean. So that means that although it is denied by both Pakistan as well as China that Gwadar deep sea port will not become a naval base for China, it will, ladies and gentlemen, sooner or later it will become a naval base and a listening post for China. And that day will arrive very soon. Pentagon has already claimed this fact in its report in 2017 about China planning to make Gwadar as its naval base among the strings of naval pearls which I have mentioned: Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and Djibouti. So with the CPEC becoming operational in a few years, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the whole world, a new world of conflict and a new great game in this region. I hope I had been successful in somewhat. I had been rushing, I know, but because of the time constraints allow me to do that. I had been successful in opening up your horizon as to why China needs access to the Indian Ocean, why it needs access to the Gwadar deep sea port, why does it want a successful culmination of CPEC project. And mark my words, China will go to any length to make it happen, make this China-Pakistan economic corridor become a success story. I will come to, because obviously China's global ambitions to become a superpower one day are linked to this project. I'll come with the Pakistan-China relations, bilateral relations and its historic context in the next segment. But thank you very much for having patience with me and listening to what all I had to say in part 1. Basically this is part 4, but part 1 of the 7 segments we have successfully completed to give you an overall overview and background of what this CPEC is, what is this BRI, and how does it get interconnected with China's strategic interests in the region as well as its access to the Indian Ocean. So both from economic point of view, ladies and gentlemen, as well as from geopolitical and geostrategic points of view. So thank you very much. Until and we come with the next part, that will be part 5, talking about the Sino-Pak bilateral relations in their historic context. Thank you very much. Until that time, allow Adnan Qaiser to sign off. We'll see you again. Thank you.